Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seafood Matters, and thank you for joining us again. Our guest today is Linda Wood. Linda is the CEO of Community Catch. With years of experience across seafood supply chains and corporate sustainability, Linda has turned her passion towards supporting small-scale fishing communities, most recently celebrating a massive milestone with the Orkney creel fisheries becoming the first in the world to achieve Community Catch recognition. Hi, Linda. It's great to have you back again, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jim. It's great to be here again. I feel very lucky to be back for a second time, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. If you didn't mind me, I was thinking of starting by asking you. I know Orkney really, really well. Obviously, it's our close neighbour, though there's a stretch of water between us. But I've done lots of business, and I just have so much respect and admiration for them. If you were getting to the stage what they've done and you were over for what they've achieved, I don't think there's any better place to have a celebration than in Orkney.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just delighted that Orkney was able to become the first fishery to go through the Community Catch programme and get the recognition that they've fought so hard for so many years. They've been running a very well managed creel fishery for a long time now, and have been passionate about getting that acknowledgement and being able to evidence that, really. And so we've been working with them now for about 5 years with Community Catch, and just delighted. And the people there, you're right, they're a very special person, island communities, everything. Everybody knows everybody. The impact of that fishery is huge. Everybody's related to a fisherman or has somebody connected with the industry, and to sustain a thriving creel fishery there, and any fishery in Orkney has a huge impact on many, many people in that community. So it really is a fantastic example of a small-scale fishery being recognised for doing the right thing, and we're proud to be associated with them. So it was great to be up with them in July and celebrate that. And we had great support, lots of fishermen around, but we also had the Highlands and Islands Council as well there. The local council had the local MP, Alistair Carmichael, which was absolutely fantastic. The local enterprise, and Harriet Watt University, the local fishery scientists, and it really was a collective of people who all care passionately about that fishery and want it to do well.
Would that be a message in that which would show the magnitude of what they achieved?
Yeah, I think they should really be seen as a beacon of hope and inspiration, really, for small-scale fisheries, community fisheries around the world, in that if you organise yourselves well, if you align on doing the right thing and following the rules and acting responsibly, then you should be capable of getting the recognition for that, and evidencing it in a way that the markets want. And what are the ultimate benefits of doing it? I suppose you've had somebody independently verify what you do as being good and to a standard, which is fantastic. And why is that important? It's important because more and more markets now are demanding reassurances that there are no human rights issues at sea. There's not, there aren't problems with health and safety, that the stock's well managed, that the environment's not damaged. And I think that's what Orkney's gone and done. And I think it probably couldn't have happened without two organisations who've been fundamentally important. One is the Orkney Fishermen's Association, so OFA. Most of the boats in Orkney are members of OFA, and that has allowed everybody to speak to the fishermen as a whole, through that membership, and talk to them about what they wanted for the fishery, what they were looking for. So they were absolutely fundamentally important to make sure that the fishermen is what they wanted and they were engaged. And then, there had to be somebody to drive it forward, really, and lead it, really. And actually, on this occasion, that ended up being Orkney Crab Processors, owned by PDK. And that, that could have been led in a very selfish way, I suppose, in a way that only benefited Orkney crab factory, so it could have been done with just the boats that were supplying into that factory. But that wasn't the approach Paul Knight wanted to take, and quite rightly. So he did it for the benefit of the entire fleet. So, I think all boats bar one are part of the scope. And so it took those two bodies to make this happen, with the support of the fishermen, obviously.
When you say that, Linda, I'm sure you'd have come across it yourself. I would, one of the buzzwords and used a lot now is things like support locals and local support and things like that. But I would say there's no better example of support each other than in Orkney. And I found that, and when I say that, I'm going back 30, 40 years. I found it absolutely fantastic. We would have Orkney boats landing in the mainland here. I would have been their agent, and I would say what a fishing boat needs for going back to sea. They need stores, fuel, ice, all the things that a boat needs. And depending on where they were going, if they were going back fishing, yes, they would take what they need. But just say they were going back to Orkney, changing crew or getting something done with the boat before they sailed, they would say, no stores, no fuel, nothing. They would take it at home and support their local. And that support, I would just say, you can imagine a fishing boat with 8 to 10 of a crew for food for a week. I've seen bills of £800 to £1,000 for a trip, what they call us as a trip. And maybe they could get some of the major supermarkets on the mainland and save themselves hundreds of pounds.
I think
they would take it from their local shop on the islands, not just the mainland.
Yeah, I think I think that island mentality. I mean, I wasn't born on an island. Well, I was born in the UK, which is an island, but a smaller island like Orkney, and I think that came into play hugely. That we had the event, we planned the event, and everybody came together to contribute something to make that happen. And we needed to get hold of this or that or whatever it was, and everybody knew someone who did that. And we used, when we were there, we used local businesses to provide the catering, obviously, to provide we handed out a few hats and a few things when we were there, and we worked with all the local businesses, and actually we made some really strong relationships there that we'll continue to use outside of Orkney. But absolutely, it's for the benefit of the entire Orkney population. And I think they very much operate like we're an island. We need to look after ourselves first. And
very much so,
and it's great. It's great to see that.
And they do that so well. I think you've maybe answered a question I was going to ask you about. They would have worked for years to gain this recognition, but is it the 5 you said, or could they have been longer working on this?
Yes, well, I can't remember exactly when they started. They initially started looking for recognition with the MSC, Marine Stewardship Council standard, many years ago. I don't remember exactly when that was. And they put all the effort into that, fantastic effort. And actually, they were really unfortunate, and they missed out on achieving MSC by 1 point, I believe. And it was all because really their management jurisdiction of their waters. So quite unlike Shetland in that regard, where Shetland has a jurisdiction around its own sort of local waters, Orkney doesn't have the same thing. So the expectations of the MSC standard was about the management of the crab stocks in a much wider area than just Orkney, and that's something that Orkney can't really control or don't even really participate in. So they were unable to achieve the Marine Stewardship Council a few years ago. So after that happened, they were really disappointed, and they put the fishery into a fishery improvement plan for the crab anyway, the brown crab. And they've really been maintaining that for quite a period of time and sort of, I guess, drifting along, but always knowing that they would never be able to achieve the MSC standard, which is quite sad for them because it's something that was out their hands. If it was something that they could have fixed themselves, they would have done that by now. So it was completely coincidental that Community Catch started working on a new standard in 2021, and we got to the point where we started trialling that in 2023 and 2024. And at that point, the Orkney crab were one of the fisheries we started trialling with. And I think we were just both fortunate that we came along at the right time for each other. So they were thrilled when Community Catch was invented, I suppose. They were part of that, in that, this is fit for purpose for our fishery. This is absolutely suitable for a small scale fishery like us. So they helped us with alpha trials of the standard. They helped us with beta trials. So that means that they commented on whether they thought that was a relevant question or not, how they would answer it. They did the practice runs, I suppose. And they really helped to shape what that standard was, along with 14 other fisheries across the world. So yeah, they're really in the DNA of Community Catch. And I think that they saw something that was fit for purpose for them, and they've grabbed the opportunity. And it's fantastic that they've been the first to be able to get that reward and recognition. And we had other fisheries around the world who may have come in before them. We have a fishery in South Africa just now that's just waiting for its result. But Orkney, they were very organised, coordinated, and got over the line first. So I think just timing really worked out perfectly for. Yeah. I think if Community Catch didn't exist though yet, they'd still be in a FIP for their crab, and feeling quite frustrated about that, I think. And with more and more pressure coming on them and every other crab fishery actually in the UK from the markets to say, how are you evidencing your due diligence in that supply chain? And it's, all the fisheries are coming under more pressure now to prove that. So I think it's just right time and place for both of us, which is fortunate. Yeah, meant to be.
Yeah, but the other one you mentioned, I feel I think you're more at a level with the community, and I think, well, the name is much better, but with the other one, to get up to their standard, you had to, fishermen would find that it was almost like a gun at their head, because they would be on the fish market, their fish would be on the market, and buyers would have to pay less, because unless they were approved, they couldn't buy them for supermarkets.
Yeah, I think the schemes, we run different schemes. I think what we're really proud of with Community Catch is that we're not just recognising the environment and ecosystem of a fishery and how they're managed. We also care deeply about the communities, the people going fishing, that their labour rights are protected, that they're safe. We've got a little bit in there about climate impact and animal welfare, meaning that anything you're releasing back to sea is going to survive. If you return it an undersized animal, it's going to survive and everything. And so we take a different approach to that. We also, one of the big barriers to entry for a lot of small scale fisheries in moving towards certification has been the cost of doing that. It has been expensive in the past to choose alternative schemes. And some small scale fisheries have organised themselves and been able to afford that. Shetland's a great example of that, actually, but others weren't. So we've made sure that our scheme is more affordable, so it's more accessible to more small scale fisheries. So therefore there shouldn't be any hurdles in there for any buyers to want to buy product from a Community Catch fishery.
And do you think that was our biggest hurdle to get in there?
I think there were two hurdles probably. One is cost, and how well you can get organised as a fishery to go through such a scheme such as MSC. It's a heavy lift for people, but it can be done, and it is being done in small scale fisheries around the world. But that cost was, when we spoke to lots of fisheries at the conception, that was number one, came out, and also the level of complexity. So meaning that if you look at fishery managements in particular, it's very difficult in a lot of small scale fisheries, which are data poor. Many of them aren't quota species, they don't have tax. It's quite difficult for them to evidence the management to the level that the MSC requires when it's a non-quota species and there's known tax in place. So when you've not got a stock assessment, for instance. So we were really keen to develop something which allowed people to use the data that they'd gathered for years, the landing data, and the size and measurements of the animals and everything, to use that data to contribute towards that assessment of whether that fishery was being managed effectively or not. So we give the people a few different tools to be able to use to be able to evidence that, the effective management of a fishery without it being this very comprehensive fishery management plan. So and it's working well. There are a lot of fisheries, shellfish in particular in the UK, which are considered data poor, and as a result, they end up with a MCS rating of a 4 or a 5 because they're data poor. Well, those fisheries are going to remain data poor if nobody engages with those fisheries and tries to actually quantify, well, what data do we have right now and where are the gaps and what do we need to do? So hopefully Community Catch can give people the opportunity to engage these data poor fisheries in our scheme and start building up that data in a sensible, pragmatic way.
I think that's amazing what you're doing there, Linda. I'll give you an example, and it's a direct example that I came across myself. Now, we were a small community, our area, Caithness. We were a small business with our seafood restaurant. We were MSC approved, and I was wanting to put mackerel.
Yeah.
I was getting mackerel on the menu, and the only way that I was allowed to use their logo to MSC approved for my mackerel was buying it frozen in blocks. Now, bear in mind, we're in Scrabster, one of the main fishing ports around the coast. And I had to buy it from Peterhead, frozen blocks.
Yeah.
That's the only way we could use their logo and say it was MSC approved. And I phoned them one day and I says, you can't be serious about that. That's crazy. I says, I'm in my restaurant just now in Scrabster. I says, I can stand at the kitchen door and watch the guys catching the mackerel.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to use it. No, I had to. I want even. There's nothing they did to change that. This is crazy, and I just had nothing more to do with it.
Yeah, I think it has been a frustration for some people, actually. And I think, in many ways, what is trying to be achieved there is correct in that, if a fishery goes to the trouble of investing the money to get recognition that they're operating responsibly, and they've spent the money on that and they've said that it's these boats fishing in this area with this gear, then it's important that people can't take that product and trade it willy-nilly and not do it properly, not keep the integrity. So, for instance, we can't have people who are taking a ton of Orkney crab, for instance, and a ton of community catch Orkney crab, for instance, and then selling 2 tons of community catch crab from Orkney. We can't have that fraud, in the supply chain. And so what I guess certification schemes do, and we do the same, is we want the people who are trading that product to take it seriously and protect the integrity of that supply of that product. So when it's in the factory, that you keep the community catch crab separate to the non-community catch crab, and you sell it differently, and all the way through the chain, you can prove that that's what it is. And at the end of that, one of the benefits of doing that is to then be able to advertise the hell out of it and put your logo on pack, or your MSC logo, or your community catch logo on pack, if or on counter if it's a certified fishery, and so we want people to prove that they have done the right thing, and that they are selling what, like Traders Description Act, that they are selling what they say they're selling. So the chain of custody in itself, the principle of that is absolutely correct and good for everybody. That the public aren't being misled. I think what becomes frustrating for people and difficult for people is where the motivation for having a chain of custody is driven by a commercial gain there. So, if you do want to use our logo, we're going to charge you for using the logo. Now, we haven't taken that approach at all. We do have a logo for our certified fisheries. We allow people to use that for free, which has been a barrier for entry for markets where they've said, I want to buy that product, but I can't afford, or I'm not willing to pay for the logo license. So again, we've listened to that. So, but we want people to shout loudly that they're selling a well-managed product, rather than maybe one that's not evidenced in the same way. So yeah, chain of custody is important, but not everybody wants to put a claim on product either. Fish counters are different, I think, but on a packet of product now in supermarkets, there's so many messages on packs now. It's quite confusing for the customer to know what does a logo mean. So with our community catch, we don't actually expect many of the UK retailers to put that logo on pack because there's lots on there already. But we probably do expect people who have their own brands and have their own fish counters to use a logo, and that's because brands often do want some third-party statement on there which says that don't just believe our brand, believe their brand too. And I think people genuinely like the idea and the concept of community catch and what it says about their business, and what it says about their business if they're sourcing product from fisheries which are small scale and support not just the environmental side but the social side and support communities. And I think they like that, and I think that it makes them look like an ethical marketplace, and so they want to talk positively about that. And I think our name's helpful. Community Catch is helpful. It sounds friendly name. It does what it's in.
Very much so.
And I think it's quite easy to explain as well to consumers. So we might see the Community Catch logo appear in time on product, or we might not. And we don't have a vested interest either way, but we certainly want to help all the fisheries that have gone through this process to absolutely celebrate that and advertise that as much as they can. And we've had some really, as a result of Orkney being the first, we've had some fantastic conversations with lots of different people now. Some in America, we have an American member who was looking for some brown crab, looking to the UK for some brown crab, and couldn't believe their luck when we told them that we now had a community catch fishery. So, that's a potential new American market for that.
Look at that.
Would not have existed without it. And then we've got some, continental Europe, French and Spanish buyers who people might historically say they maybe haven't been as deliberate in their drive for asking for third-party certification. But we've got some, French and Spanish markets who are interested in community catch and are interested in the fact that they'll be able to say that their crab, lobster, velvet crabs are from this fishery, and let me tell you the story about it. Because community catch does, if people go on our website, we want to tell the story about the fishery. We want it to have a personality and you to meet the fishermen who are involved as well. So, and that is that's marketable for some people. It's not anonymous seafood, is it? It's then go to home. It's come from somewhere. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things you've actually done is what you've helped the small scale fishermen to navigate through.
Yeah, it's really good and it's really fulfilling. And I as a direct result of Orkney, I've since spoken to another even smaller scale fishery around Scotland and similar species, and they were genuinely interested and genuinely said, should this be something we're interested in? And you speak to people and say, well, this is how it works, this is what you need to do, and this is some of the benefits we perceive and everything, and they speak among themselves. And just yesterday came back and said, we want to do this, we want this recognition, we're proud of what we do, we want people to love buying from us, we're going to go ahead and do this. And I just love that. I love that Orkney has inspired other fisheries to be proud of what they do and lead their own agendas. And I think for me, we've had so many years of market-driven sustainability drives in fisheries and top down, and you will do this and you can't supply us unless you do this. And if you do it the opposite way around, and it's actually fisheries who are saying, I want to do this because I'm proud of what I do and I want this recognition, I think that's really exciting, because I think any scheme that's available that the fishermen don't want to do is never going to be hugely successful. The fishermen have to want to do this. And, fishermen, what a hell of a life. Like they're at sea all the time. They're not sat around tables thinking about how to make their lives more difficult. They're trying to survive, thinking what the weather is. And, so for a fisherman to actually say, this is useful to me, I want to do this, that's a really great endorsement for what we're trying to achieve here, I think. It's like the acid test. So really exciting that we've been able to start inspiring other fisheries to take that accountability and ownership themselves and look for some reward for what they've done.
I would say the one part I would say you've maybe missed out on is the big stick effect. And what I would liken it to is so far just the Orkney fishermen, but others, small scale fishermen, when they come to the marketplace and it's a case of whether somebody's going to buy their fish or not, they're able to wield the big stick and say, well, if you don't, you're going to have Linda Woods to contend with.
That sounds like a terrible. I don't know what that means fully, actually, Jim.
You with a big stick, if they don't buy their.
I don't know. Like the market ultimately will decide what it buys, and the market. We shouldn't pretend that everybody's got all the money in the world, and price is a massive part of why people buy from certain fisheries and not from others, and supply and demand and everything. And it becomes irrelevant that a fishery is certified or not when times are hard, and markets are flexible to make sure products on the shelf. So it isn't the holy grail. It doesn't solve all problems at all, but in a normal world, it should give you some sort of market advantage in that you can differentiate your product. You can now not only say my brown crab, lobster and velvet crab from Orkney is from Orkney. You can now say they are also community catch certified, which means labour rights are good, people are safe when they're going to sea, environment ecosystems looked after. So that adds another layer of reassurance so keep buying from Orkney because we can evidence now that this is what we've done. And so that strengthens the Orkney brand, and we shouldn't, we've got to face into the fact that Orkney has got a brand. Orkney as an set of islands has got a brand, and Orkney cheese and Orkney cattle, and there's a million different products that people will specifically be choosing them because they exclusively come from Orkney. So, the Orkney brand is way stronger than a community catch brand, but hopefully we can complement the Orkney brand and it's another layer of. I think provenance is a massive part of why people buy certain things. Product quality, I think, is top. Price and product quality is why people are making buying decisions. But I think provenance comes up there. Where is it from? Some people will only ever buy British. Some people will only ever buy Scottish. Some people will only ever buy Orkney, and it just depends. But I think that what Community Catch offers is, a level, a housekeeping standard to say that keep doing that. And if you do keep buying that product, then you can know that these things have been looked at and taken care of. We can have some confidence. And I think that should just strengthen a brand like Orkney.
Yeah. And I hope you don't take me serious because really what was taking me to that point was I just love your passion.
Yeah, it's hard not to be passionate about it.
Yeah. But I would also totally agree with you. I think you couldn't have a better brand, a word in your product, Orkney, and I just feel it's quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Like people, I worked in retail for a while, and like there's certain products that Orkney supplies that it just tastes better. It just tastes better than from other places, and for whatever reason. But it's a very specific region, climate, landscape, everything, and it's a very powerful quality brand. The chefs in London will quote Orkney. I'll only get my hand-dyed scallops from there, or I'll only get this from there, and for an island north of the country, they've got a big reach. They've got a huge global reach already in where their shellfish is going. It'd be interesting to map that out actually to show where it's going. But the amount of product that's shipped down to London for the top restaurants is really significant, and also to Europe. So so if we can complement that strong brand, but also I don't want to make small scale fisheries feel like you have to have sort of a regional brand to be successful with us either. We can be working with fisheries in all sorts of different places, not on an island, obviously. But that regionality and differentiating your product, say my product from this specific area is I think important to everybody really. So it's a good start. It's fortunate for both parties. I think we have equally benefited from being the first. In that Orkney's been our first. It's a fantastic poster child example of what a small scale fishery could look like. And Community Catch has been fortunate enough to work with them as the first one. So I think it's helped us be able to communicate what Community Catch is trying to do with a very high quality product with global reach. And a known brand. So yeah, it's a good start.
When you talk about Orkney products, there's one that I should maybe not be proud to tell you of, but one of my claims to fame as far as Orkney products is concerned, it was back in the 80s, and we had a contract. It was actually ended up with M&S, and it was through a factory in Fraserburgh, and we had a contract with some Orkney boats and their fish.
Yeah.
So we had a quarterly meeting, and we would have it in different venues depending on what suited everybody. So this one was going to be in Kirkwall.
Yeah.
So the guy from Fraserburgh was up, flew in. I came over from Caithness, and we had our meeting, and we were staying overnight in the Kirkwall Hotel.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about Orkney produce, my claim to fame is the guy who was with me and myself, we cleaned the night porter stock in the Kirkwall Hotel of Highland Park. Emptied it.
Yeah, we spoke a lot about Highland Park while we were up there that weekend actually as well. There's a couple of breweries there, isn't there, that very popular. Yeah.
Oh yeah. They're really good. The Swanee Brewery, what a character that guy is, and he's so knowledgeable on his product.
Yeah, there was a little bit consumed on the celebratory evening. Highland Park, it was a specific request, I think. Very, very good. We've brought a few gifts home as well, actually. I think a few of our friends benefited from the trip because we brought home at least 3 bottles south of the border. So, yeah.
And how will this certification directly protect local livelihoods and safeguard their access to the major supermarkets?
Well, Orkney crab processors have already done a pretty good job in getting Orkney brown crab in particular into 4 UK retailers at the moment. So there's 4 retailers already selling that product. And that was previously justified really based on the fact that the brown crab was in this fishery improvement plan previously. So now the Orkney crab fishery can continue for that fishery improvement plan to continue. That's up to them whether they want to do it or not. Or they can stop that now that they've got Community Catch. So of those 4 retailers, the majority of them are already very engaged with Community Catch and understand what we're about and understand the added value that having Community Catch in that fishery has led to. So I think what it's done from a UK retail market is secured the future of that fishery to make sure that people continue to source from Orkney. And the reason that's important is that you can actually source brown crab from multiple fisheries around the UK coast. It doesn't have to be Orkney. And so many retailers don't just use crab from one origin. Some do. Some do use just exclusively Orkney. But the majority, I would say, generally would source around multiple fisheries. So where it should be beneficial is now that Orkney is certified, then the retailers will be having conversations with the other fisheries which are not in that place and asking them what they're doing. So what are your plans in that area? So Orkney might see a level of preferential treatment potentially. We don't control this. Orkney might see some people exclusively move into Orkney sourced fished product, which again would boost business. And then outside of the existing market. So there's one element which is holding on to the people you already sell to and making sure that they continue to buy from you and you're their preferred supplier. And then the other thing we hope to happen when a fishery gets community catch recognition is that we hope to then introduce them to markets that didn't know they existed before. So a great example of that has been our American member who was starting to look for some brown crab, went to the usual places to find brown crab. So you would go to Fishery Progress website and see if you've got any brown crab fisheries in a FIP. You'd look there, and you'd also maybe look on the MSC website. Well, the only MSC fishery for brown crab is in Shetland, and I think that market's quite closed for their product. I think they sort of already have a pretty clear market. So so they were scratching their head as to where do I go for crab? Where can I buy this crab from? And so, they're a member of ours, so we speak to them regularly and keep them up to date with who our fisheries are and everything. And we basically made the introduction, and they're already in conversations. So that just wouldn't have happened if we hadn't gone through this. So it's our job to create that shop window really for our fisheries, whether they're certified or in a fishery improvement plan, the Community Catch Fishery Improvement Plan, to create that shop window so that we can make sure that they're known to that global market, and matchmake really. So we'll speak to our members, what are you looking for? Oh, this could be a fishery, and we'll speak to our fisheries and say, which markets are you looking for? But the Orkney crab has got a pretty established market already. It can sell, I think, pretty much all the crab it produces quite easily. I think where opportunities could maybe come from this for the fishery is in lobster. So not only is this is the second certified brown crab fishery in the UK. The first one is the MSC one in Orkney, in Shetland, but this is the first lobster certified fishery anywhere in the UK. So that's actually a bigger claim potentially. And if you actually look at where people get lobster from, not in retail, unfortunately, most people are still importing in Canadian lobsters, for the bulk trade in the UK. Yep. So why is that? Well, they're MSC, so they're easy. They meet the requirements, so it's quite easy to do that. They can buy them in a specific size, buy them in frozen stock. They can control the price with that, in that they can lay them down different times of the year and everything. And I think historically, quite a lot of UK fisheries for lobster have been data deficient, so they haven't been able to evidence that where they're at. I think they've also, so they've been data deficient. They've maybe been in MCS 4 or 5. And I think it's not been easy for a market to say, oh, I can buy a responsibly sourced UK lobster and trade it into a retailer, because I just can't I don't have enough evidence around me to say that the stock's good and everything. So now that we've got community catch lobster, people can look at that self-assessment and they can say, oh, wow, fantastic. Stock's good. I can buy that product. And that's to me really exciting. Now, that's wonderful if the market now thinks, oh, I can start buying some UK lobster, but the fishermen also have to want to sell it to the UK market as well. So, and that's supply and demand again. So the fishermen have choices. The prices fluctuate wildly in lobster, particularly around Christmas, and UK retailers will be looking for like a fixed price that can be agreed months in advance of the event, and that's a different mindset for fishermen to do that rather than sell on the fresh market and trade market prices. So, but I'd really like to think that velvet crab and lobster should start seeing some new markets because of this. But it's early days. We're not even a month since we launched. Well, no, we're just over a month actually since we launched. So, but yeah, I certainly am aware of a couple of UK businesses who are looking at Orkney lobster now who weren't before.
That's fantastic. That's really great.
Yeah.
And going on from the experience with Orkney, it'll now serve as an inspiration for other small fisheries. What is your immediate message to small local fleets around the world who feel they are maybe either priced out or overlooked by traditional certification models?
Yeah, we've got 15 fisheries, so 14 other fisheries around the world right now who are already going through our process, our self-assessment process, and then they'll go into evaluation. So the process takes about 6 months, 4 to 6 months roughly. And just this week we've got two fisheries. One's in northern Italy and one is in the Reunion Islands, actually, who are about to go into public consultation in their fisheries and start the evaluation process, which is really, really exciting. We've got a fishery in South Africa, a line fishery catching yellowtail, which is in evaluation right now. And in the next 3 weeks, we'll have a decision on that fishery. So that'll be our second. So, by the end of this year, we should have 6 or so fisheries which have completed this, of all shapes and sizes, shellfish, trap caught, line caught fish, multiple different species, and I think that they all stand to inspire others to look for this recognition and everything, and each fishery has had its own motivation for why it would want to go through the community catch process. So some fisheries can't afford MSC, and they also don't identify as being sort of a bigger industrial type fishery. So they're social enterprises. So the South African fishery is social enterprise, and community is a massive part of that fishery in Strasbourg. The fishery in northern Italy is a shellfish fishery, but it's with an amazing backstory. It used to be a manila clam fishery, which was then invasive species in the area, and then Atlantic blue crab appeared as another invasive species and wiped out the clam fishery. And so that whole communities had to pivot and start fishing the Atlantic blue crab. But they're trading product, canned product, all over the world really successfully. And it saved that community. That community would not be there. People were moving away from the area, just jobs gone, just devastating. So there's some really powerful stories behind many of the fisheries we're working with. We're working with a First Nation community in Saskatchewan in Canada, Canadian lake fisheries. And these are guys ice fishing. So you might have seen films where people are drilling holes in the ice.
Yeah.
First Nation communities, that's what they do, hunting and fishing, and they're looking for recognition to be able to trade into this, different parts of the States and Canada. So this is, not far off subsistence for some people. So I think just a few examples of these fisheries, and I think lots of small-scale fisheries around the world should then be able to identify and say, that's like me. There's a solution for me, as well. And I think that's really powerful, because Orkney crab won't inspire everyone. It will inspire some people, but not everybody will relate to that. There'll be lots of fisheries who look at Orkney crab and think that's a very sophisticated fishery that, nothing like theirs. But we're working with lots of blue swimming crab fisheries, which are Southern Hemisphere generally. Lots of challenges, trap fishing, gill nets, but hugely commoditized products sold all around the world. So very important species for crab consumption globally. So yeah, I think we've got lots of inspiring stories ahead of us, which is just fascinating, and can't wait to tell them.
You're giving a new meaning to the well-known phrase, big is not always beautiful.
No, it's not. But also, I keep getting reminded as well, small's also not beautiful and can also not be beautiful sometimes. But I think this is about equity, and it's got to be about there's a place for everyone, regardless of your size. There's something that's suitable for you, and choice. And we're just offering choice really in that wild capture sector, which has been available in aquaculture for many years now, and people are used to that. So we're just offering choice, something fit for purpose for the smaller guys, which includes recognition of labour rights and health and safety, which are, I know I keep banging on about it, but we think it's really important. And it's even more important in small scale fisheries. The people, this is why they're in those coastal communities. You cannot separate it and just care more about the fish stocks and not care about the people who are making a livelihood there and surviving. So we're really proud of that. And if by going through community catch, we can help strengthen the security of that fishery and help that become more resilient, then that's a good thing that we've done.
Absolutely. Many good things you've done.
Yeah.
And how does a community cod standard maintain rigorous sustainability and social criteria while still
Yeah.
providing the flexibility needed for
Yeah.
fisheries in unique regulatory situations?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that question actually, because it's a really important one and important particularly for the market. So we cannot ever be accused of greenwashing or, just pulling the wool over people's eyes. So there's really strict controls over what a standard can be. So there's a couple of benchmarks actually, which means there's a couple of industry standards which we have to meet for us to be considered credible. So the first one is called GSSI. So this is around the environment and ecosystem side of our standard. It's a standard that is independent. It's a framework, several criteria, and our standard needs to be built to achieve all of those requirements. So when we wrote the standard a few years ago, we wrote it in alignment with that. And we have to go through an application process and actually get that formally completed. Now, it takes a while. You can't start it until you've actually got a fishery that's gone through the process. So we launched in May 25, we got Orkney through in July 26, and that means we can start the application process. So we plan to submit the application in October time this year, and based on that, it can take 20 to 28 weeks. We expect to have a result by April 2027. And why that's important is that we really want people, fisheries and our members markets, to feel as confident taking from a community catch fishery as they do from a MSC fishery. And the GSI benchmark is the way to do that. So, no questions can be asked. If we've met the GSI benchmark and MSC have met the GSI benchmark, then that's fantastic for us. So that's on the environment ecosystem side. And so at the moment, we're working without that, but we're in the process. So the people who are getting involved with us from a membership point of view at this time are early adopters. They're people who believe in what we're doing and they're confident with what we're doing and the standard that we will achieve that. And we're very grateful to those people. The other standard, which can be used to verify the standard of the social sides of the standard, is called an SSCI. So that covers the social side. So we've got a meeting later this year with them to start that process with them, and we'll also be seeking recognition from the SSCI standard. And so there are other social standards out there like RFVS, which we'll be familiar with, and they are SSCI benchmarked. So that would mean that if we are GSSI benchmarked, then we're on a par with MSC, and if we're SSCI benchmarked, we're on a par with RFVS, Fair Trade, etc. So that means that people can't call into question our credibility in terms of how robust our standards are, which is very important. And then the last cherry on top, there's also, you can go for ISEAL recognition, which ISEAL recognition is wider than seafood, and it also includes things like better cotton and sustainable wood, so FSC wood, etc. So we also will be going for that recognition as well after we've finished GSSI and SSCI. So we're really serious about being credible choice for people. And we really don't want to be having conversations with people where they're trying to pitch us off against each other and say who's better. It's not a competition, it's just healthy choice. And we don't want to be, we're not here to be in competition with people. We're here to help the fisheries who currently aren't able to access improvement schemes. So yeah, so that's our due diligence basically, that's our governance, and that's all underway now. So yeah. And then we have to refresh our standard every 5 years. Well, we don't have to, we have to review it. So our standard's now a year old. We need to look at it and we need to learn from the first fisheries and see if there's anything in there that we need to change, enhance. We'll do stakeholder consultation. People might have an opinion that this bit needs more or less. So we'll do that in 5 years from 2030. We'll be doing a 5-year review of the standard. And there's an opportunity there to enhance if we need to, or adjust, or better guidance. But I would probably point out at this point, we also need to be very cautious when you look at revising a standard, that the fisheries that you haven't started with, can still achieve that standard. We need to be stretching in our targets. However, we need to still be realistic and based on the realities of small-scale fisheries. So we need to be careful not to make too big a leap forward and make it inaccessible again to the small-scale fisheries we're trying to help. So I think we'll hold our standard at a similar level, certainly this first 5 years. We're trying to get participation, high participation. So I think we've got a really good, solid, credible standard. So we're not planning any dramatic shifts in that in the next 5 years.
Linda, it's not about me, I know, but I really appreciate so much what you're trying to achieve. And I'll tell you, one of the times that I came across it personally, I had a fish factory opened in 1980. I closed it in the mid 90s because we were still part of the EU, and they come up with new conditions that fish factories had to reach. And it was going to cost me. It was an old engineering factory that I renovated and converted, and obviously to get up to standard at the time and put machinery in it and that. But to take it up to the EU standard was going to take more. It was going to cost me more than the actual building was worth. But I was going to the local or one of our local supermarket to buy some of my product.
Yeah.
And the supermarket said they could only entertain, I'm sure you've come across it in your past, central stocking. So before I could have a pack of, just say a pack of fillet and haddock in the local supermarket, it had to be available to every one of their supermarkets in the country.
Yeah, that I've heard that before actually from people who've got quite small volume fisheries where they've been turned away by the retailer because they weren't able to supply every single store. And I think that's quite disappointing, really. I mean, stores don't have to stock every product in every store. They have some stores which are really high performers, stores where they'll buy premium products more, and they don't have to list products like that. But I've heard of some scallop fisheries being turned away because they couldn't provide the volume that was required. It's a bit disappointing when that's said. Just tell you, yeah, exactly. That does happen. We've had we've been speaking to quite a lot of hotel chains recently, and they're fascinating. They source quite differently. They source certain things centrally, and then many hotel chains will really pride themselves on local sourcing in the country that their hotel is based. So, they might have hotels in Jamaica or Mexico or wherever, and part of the chef's special might be, a delicate, serving up the local snapper or whatever it is from the local guys. And so they're really interested in how they can basically do that responsibly. They want to source locally. They want to, you want to go to Jamaica, you want to taste the Jamaican fish that's from Jamaica, not some anonymous fish that they've shipped in. So how do they do that? So that they've got a really cool model where they have a level of central purchasing, but they also allow the chefs that free reign to source locally from those fisheries. And so they're really interesting conversations we have because we end up speaking about some tropical location somewhere with some amazing 5-star hotel and how they can get snapper on the menu or whatever. So I think, not all markets are retail, I would say. Your food service is massive as well, restaurants. And I think it's been really enjoyable for the team at Community Catch to have the conversations with all those different markets. The European market's fascinating. The live market, very different priorities. It's all about quality there. Absolutely all about quality. And everything else falls in behind there. They're less price driven, but it must be a fantastically lively langoustine, salmon or crab, for instance. So each market's different, got different motivations, and we are trying to make sure that we're known about in all of those different areas and relevant and helping them solve their challenges. Because we weren't aware of this, but there's an organisation called the Sustainable Restaurant Association, and many hotels and restaurants already sign up to that. And what that means is they've got a sourcing policy, a responsible sourcing policy, which says that they source product in not just for fish in particular ways, and they get audited by the SRA to prove that, really. So it's really interesting. I didn't even know this existed. So you've got all these hotels and restaurants around the world, and they've got to uphold these credentials. So they're the same as, I suppose, a retailer saying, well, oh my goodness, all these fisheries don't have MSc or don't have anything else. So how am I going to prove that? When the chefs are chefing, they're not going out there checking the credentials of a fishery. So therefore, community catch becomes a really helpful tool for them to say, oh, well, my local snapper fisheries are going through community catch right now. That's fantastic. I can feel good about that. So we've got a few members like that who are actually putting us in contact with fisheries that are important to them, and we can start that conversation. And usually the fishery is pretty enthusiastic because they have a big customer already who's asking them to consider this, and which means that they can then secure that supply for a longer time. It gives them some sort of level of commitment from the hotel chain that they'll stay with them because they've made this investment. So yeah, all these new opportunities pop up all the time, really.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not going to try to put myself up there, but I know exactly the organization you mentioned, because would you believe it? I think it was either 2007 or 2009. Our restaurant was called the Captain's Galley. And we were the Sustainable Restaurant of the Year winner.
Wow. Yeah. So you would have had to meet criteria to do that and prove it.
Yeah. Well, we had a environmental and ethical policy, and we showed our policy for sustainable sustainable stocks from fisheries that are cotton fisheries that are sustainable.
Yeah. It's and yeah, I think that generally everything's moving in that direction. I always use free range eggs as an example. Many years ago we just bought eggs, didn't we? And we didn't really realize they were battery caged hens, and then that came into our conscience. And as a population, we've understood that there's an alternative in free range, and now proportionally, certainly in the UK, proportionally, free range would be selling more than or barn. Like people would understand the differences and they'd be choosing differently. So I think it's the same in any sector, isn't it? It's the same with British beef or Scottish lamb or whatever. People kind of understand that makes a difference, and I think the UK as well right now is definitely going through a fly the flag for Britain phase. So I think people are very engaged in knowing where the product's coming from just now and wanting to support more local sourcing, which that's a good thing. We've got to become more self-sustainable as a country. Eat what we grow, eat what we catch, and yeah.
But I mean, when you talk about supporting communities and that, Linda, I've said it in a few recordings, I know, but one of the things that always sticks my mind is I can remember my mother, when we were obviously children at the time. My father was a fisherman, and my mother would be in the butchers for buying meat for the house, and the butcher would be telling her that he can tell in his takings when the boats have had a good week.
Yeah, because they're investing it locally, aren't they? And going to him, treating themselves to something fantastic.
So it's not just other fishermen or other boats that benefit; all local businesses.
Yeah.
Benefit.
And absolutely. And I think that's quantified in many ways, isn't it? I think Seafish have done a few reports on that, haven't they, about the impact and that community benefit of all those additional things that go on.
Yeah,
it really does. You need a thriving fishing community to be spending that money locally.
Especially for the coastal communities, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Community Catch was formed with I believe anyway, with a consortium of global buyers. How does having major retailers involved from day one change the incentive structures for small-scale fishers?
I think we were really lucky. We had we've got Woolworths South Africa, so great, far away from everywhere, but they're a top-end retailer in South Africa, so they've been engaged with us as a member since the very, very beginning. We also have Migros Switzerland, so again, top-end retail in Switzerland. I think if you said those two names, people would think about that premium end. And then we have Marks and Spencer's in the UK as being like the the 3 retailers who believed in us from the very beginning. And how that kind of came about really was, they all at the time and continue to take a different approach to sourcing. They were all putting in a lot of effort themselves to get to know the fisheries really well. They had their own strong brands. So if you walk into a Woolworths South Africa, you can trust in a Woolworths South Africa brand without having to rely on a third-party label to tell you it's okay. And I think they really sort of counselled us that, they wanted to be sourcing local as much as they could. They wanted to be sourcing a diverse range of species. And they wanted choice, really. But they also put a lot of effort in themselves personally as retailers to engage with their fisheries. So they were very well-informed retailers, which you need is always good. We've had the benefit of them. That continues. I think what we're now seeing in the membership is we're bringing on more processing partners, and they're really interesting because the processing partners are often, they're always the ones interfacing between the fishery and the market, but the processors themselves aren't just working with retailers. And the processors have a lot of choice, maybe more choice actually than the retailers do. So they really are. They've got the buying power. They're the ones paying the checks and paying the fishermen. So it's really exciting when we bring on more processors and asking them what they want and what they need, because the processors might already have a well-established market, but they might be looking to break into a completely new market as well. So, they're usually pretty active. We're announcing names all the time, but we've got some more members coming on in the next few weeks and months, which, we're really proud of, and very excited to see how we can help and support them. So, we've started with a great gang of fantastic fisheries, fantastic members, and every member that we're bringing in now in every fishery that we bring in now, we're really proud of each one of them. They're really aligned on their ethics and views and values and stuff. And we're just building up a bit of a gang of people who want the same things. And that's, it's really, really exciting. And we've had some good support. We've got, there's a million NGOs out there and, lots of different organisations out there all trying to do good things in fisheries. And, we've had great support from people like SFP, WWF, MCS, Monterey Bay, Fishery Progress, CSI. We've had so much support from all of these different people to welcome us into an arena that they've been in for many years and say, welcome, how can we help? This is great. What you're offering is interesting. This could be useful for these people we know. And so we've got a nice network now of stakeholders and supporters who help point us in the right direction, give us advice, put us in contact with the right people. Critical friends, I suppose. And we've really good quality of companies and people that we're interacting with. But I think everything ultimately always comes down to that individual human being. And just because you're part of a company called whatever doesn't mean it's all going to work perfectly. Everything, generally, all relationships based on that one human being who just cares a little bit more and just puts in a little bit more effort, who wants to lift the head above the parapet a little bit and who wants to strive for something better and be part of something innovative or inspiring or progressive. I've spent the last sort of 5 years of my time before I joined in Community Catch, luckily, at M&S, interacting with a lot of these people who are leaders in their fields and people who really are trying to make a difference and innovate, solve problems and different things. And I really respect a lot of them. And we're regularly talking to people like that to say, what do you think about this? And we take good advice from them. So it's a great group of people we're moving forward with. And I would say the feedback we're getting from people is more and more positive on a daily basis and less sceptical. I think initially people were sceptical. Who was Community Catch? What are they trying to do? And actually after the Orkney launch, we had 4 or 5 people reach out to contact us, people we'd been trying to speak to for a few months before, and they reached out to us and they came to us and said, we want to work with you. And that's really cool when that happens. That's really satisfying, because it shows that we're becoming very relevant to people. So yeah, we're in a nice phase right now, and
Well,
yeah,
all I can say to you, Linda, is keep on doing what you're doing. I'll
keep on
give you
keeping up.
I'll give you another situation I found myself in. Nobody appreciates what you're talking about and what you're doing more than myself. Now, if you picture the scene, back in my days when I had the factory I mentioned, now we were freezing. We were buying local fish. It was boats. At that time, they were smaller than the boats now. There would be one, most of them were daily boats. Some of them would be 2, maximum 3 days. They would be at sea. But they had refrigeration, ice, uh, everything. Their fish was immaculate, fantastic. Now, I was in my time, I was going back and forth to the likes of the Humber ports, Hull and Grimsby had their markets at the time. Aberdeen was still a busy fish market. And that ports would have boats, maybe, well, Hull and Grimsby especially, they would have boats still fishing Iceland and Bear Island, and that they would be away for 2 to 3 weeks and landing. And just say I was on the market, and you would get the smell of fish that were old, let's say. I'm not going to say rotten, but they would be old. And when it came to the market, I would be trying to sell our product to frozen food distributors and some of the bigger supermarket chains and that. And I reached a stage latterly, Linda, where I felt they would buy ours first, but they wouldn't pay a penny more for it.
Yeah, and this comes up in every conversation we have with fishermen. This comes up because we've got fisheries. Yeah, we've got fisheries where they're side to side basically, and they do it one way, they fish one way, and the neighbours fish it another way, and they believe they do it the right way and the best way, and they could do community catch or MSC or whatever, and they get pipped at the post regularly because the guy next door is 5 cents a dollar cheaper or whatever, and he's doing all these things that they wouldn't do, and it just drives them absolutely mad, and it's wrong, isn't it? And but we can't. The community catch have not got any way to affect that, and there'll always be those markets who will always trade like that. But there are, fortunately, also the markets where they're looking for the quality, they're looking for and they will choose that. And if and I think Scotland's a great example where it's got a lot of fisheries that do already trade with those markets. They're high value markets. They're looking for the freshest, the live market, the freshest, the best, stricter credentials. If you look at France and Spain, great example of that do not even think about sending me an average crab or langoustine that's going to keel over, it's on its last legs, not interested. They'll just cut you off straight away and they'll just go to somebody else. So I think if you're trading a quality product, there will be a market for that. You might not have it right now. Like initially, if you just trade through a market, you might not be speaking close enough to them. But I think that, it's really interesting when you see nowadays the interactions between fishing boats directly selling to consumers and directly selling to restaurants and hotels. And there's more and more of that happening now, and it's really exciting, isn't it? It's very entrepreneurial of the boat, and why shouldn't they sell what they've caught directly to the hotels, restaurants? Cut out the middleman, make the premium, and get paid fairly for what they're selling. And I think that's really exciting. So I would say that it doesn't have to be the conventional supply chains anymore that it maybe has been in the past. And I think you can find markets who will appreciate what you're selling and will pay the price and stuff. But often the easiest way to sell your fish is not going to be the most lucrative way to sell your fish. So, it's a balance, isn't it? Some boats just want to land at the harbour, put it all through the market and just not think about that and get whatever the value is back. Whereas other guys want to absolutely maximise the potential of every gram of fish that they're catching and put a lot of effort and time and resources into it. And then they're responsible for getting the money directly. And some people have that entrepreneurial spirit and want to do it and can resource it. And some people need to put it through the market. And I think each individual should make that decision. But I think, again, choice is good, isn't it? And I think certainly I see all over Instagram all the time and Facebook, all these fishermen all the time at sea coming back, selling the lobsters, and my crabs today are this much and my lobsters are this much, and I'll be at the harbour at 5:00 and come and buy them. And they're really starting to carve out a bit of a direct customer thing, and it's really cool. I think it's exciting. So yeah, I think markets have to remain relevant for people. They have to. Are they doing the best for everybody? And yeah, I think you'll always have the traders who are trading, and it's all about pricing.
When you're looking ahead and global expansion, I believe next in line, South African with yellowtail fisheries is slated to be certified next, along with other fisheries in like Canada, Indonesia, Italy, and India.
Yeah. Well, we can't control whether a fishery is certified or not certified. So it's either certified if it gets 100% and meets all of our standard, or if it doesn't, it'll go into a community catch FIP. So that's decided by the certification bodies. But certainly we have the South African Strasby fishery, yellowtail, and they are a good solid fishery. They should be capable of certification, but we still, that's not in our gift to decide that. So regardless of whether they come out in a community catch FIP or they're certified, they'll still be recognised by us. We'll still shout it from the rooftops, and it's still a very positive situation. So we've got those guys are weeks away, and then the ones I mentioned earlier, Italian Atlantic blue crab, reunion, swordfish, mahi, yellowfin, and albacore. Very exciting fishery. The lake fisheries of Canada, Indonesian skipjack. We've got lots of different fisheries coming up, so we'll have a nice basket of fish to offer. And we're across 5 continents now. We've got 23 species, I think, in play at the moment. So we've got a nice range of species, nice range of geographies. So yeah, I think we should have something for everyone. And yeah, we've got a really long pipeline of new fisheries talking to us all the time and coming on and new members. So we're busy. We're busy. And as we develop as well, we need to try and focus on, well, not need to try, we'll be focusing on, do we need to develop community hubs? So do we need to have a man on the ground or a woman on the ground in a particular region to help fisheries in that area who maybe all share similar challenges? Is it helpful to have an office there? When I say office, I mean somebody mobile working in that area, because it's very important to us that we work with people in their own native languages and we understand their cultures and priorities. So we'll be developing that over the next year about, do we end up with somebody based in South Africa or somebody based in Asia or whatever, because our team's quite well spread out just now. We're all over the world, and we'll continue to do that. But we want to have people with that local knowledge, because I think that also helps add credibility, that we're not sat in an ivory tower in London commenting on the small-scale fisheries of the Indian West Coast or something. How could we possibly have any idea what the reality is of that? Is it more appropriate that we've got somebody based in that area, and probably as things develop? So we want to make sure that we're globally represented, and can spend a sufficient amount of time with everybody that we need to.
When you're talking about global, do you ever come across a situation? I remember my brother was working in the Seychelles, and we were out seeing them, and I was obviously, as wherever I am, anybody in the fishing industry, we always find a harbour or a market. And I'm talking to people involved in the fishing industry in the Seychelles, and they were talking the biggest problem they had was big, massive, great Japanese factory ships and uh, Spanish as well, and just cleaning their seas and really curtailing them. And I thought for a while, my goodness, I could be in Scotland still listening to this because the foreign boats in our waters, it was the same story. So, do you find that comes up?
We haven't had to directly address that right now with any of the fisheries we're currently working with. I would say, but we're certainly well aware of that. I mean, in terms of what is a small scale fishery? A small scale fishery for us, we've got a criteria, 8 criteria that people have to answer about. You know, it's a little bit about size of vessel, how long are you at sea, how far away at sea are you, how many crew have you got, how big's your engine, how active is your gear, and a combination of those factors will decide whether you qualify as small scale and can go ahead with us or not. So we definitely, out of scope for us. Any boats that are at sea for more than 30 days would be immediately out of scope for us. Any boats that are fishing in an EEZ would be immediately out of scope for us. So we could never work with any high seas vessels or anybody out more than 200 miles, which is away for 30 days. So that, we're just not fit for purpose for them. They should stick with MSC and, or the schemes to recognise those bigger, more commercial fisheries. But no, we don't have any examples of that live with us right now. But I would say that that whole spatial squeeze and who's taking the fish and can I access the fish, that's as relevant a conversation in the UK as it is in the Seychelles, and certainly when we speak to people about crab on the East Coast. And you can't get the first sentence out without the word wind turbine and seals. So every fishery's got its own challenges for why the fish isn't in the water anymore, or if it is, who's taking it. And so, I'm sure we will come across that at some point, but we don't have that in our lead fisheries. I think as we get more established, we'll probably come across some trickier fisheries, with more complicated challenges. Our first fisheries really are coming from people that we've known for a while, and they're quite straightforward. They're fisheries who are already pretty organised. They already know that they want to go down this route. It's been kind of like Orkney, where they always wanted to get the recognition. So these guys have already gathered a lot of information about themselves. So we haven't been asked yet to work with a fishery that's got huge challenges like that. But it's very real, and it's and it's even more real if it's forage fish. If people are taking in massive ships there and they're taking the fish for fish meal purposes rather than human consumption, that's hugely controversial globally, and there's a lot of conversation about that with the aquafeed gang as well, rightly so. So I think that any fish that we're taking out of the water, anybody needs to be justified as, is that a responsible thing to do? And marine trusts cover off that well, cover that stuff well from the fish feed side of things. So but there's challenges, isn't there? There's really big problems, many different places.
You ever find you come across challenges with maybe political tensions between countries?
Not necessarily political tensions between countries, but we have a fishery in Uganda at the moment, and they were one of our very early adopters, and they've had to take a pause at the moment. And what we find is, a change of government in a country can absolutely stop something from happening overnight. So depending on which country, but lots of the island nations, coastal state nations, there can be coups, there can be change of government, change of fishery ministers, all sorts of stuff. So there's, some fisheries are very, some fisheries we work with are very, you have to engage heavily with the government and the ministry and the fisheries ministers, etc. Like Asian countries, when we went to Indonesia, we were meeting with the fishery ministers and everything. So that's where you start the conversation, basically. Yeah. That's not really how you approach it in the UK. You don't go start to the ministers and then go down. You actually start with the fishermen. So But yeah, Uganda's been interesting in that, those guys, they've had to change the government and they have to wait. This is not a priority for them to get the backing and support just now. So they need to take a pause. And so, that can be a bit disappointing for all parties. But it's a reality. So yeah, you end up getting caught up in all sorts of different reasons why things can and can't happen. And, there's a lot of NGOs out at work around the world in fisheries, and many of them rely on funding from the same sources. Often quite a lot of them were funded from America. America's reduced its funding of lots of organisations, so therefore these organisations that have been out in the field, paid for years, aren't getting that same funding anymore. So are they pulling out as well? So yeah, those global economic stories we hear on the news at 10 every night are very applicable in fisheries, and we see the impact of them. So I think we've all learned to be very fluid and dynamic and not take things too personally and just try and roll with the latest status. And I always encourage the team to, this is a long game. We're just a year old, so we're just babies. So we're here for the long time, and we'll look back on this in 20 years' time and say, "Wow, remember those days." So we're just getting started, and things flux up and down all the time, don't they? We can just deal with what we've got in front of us right now. But I
think that's a responsible way of approaching it.
Yeah, we don't need to deliver everything in the first 5 minutes. We're here for a long time, and it's about building really solid, credible foundations.
Yeah,
getting some good first fisheries and members, and growing.
Yeah. I believe there's something awful going on just now, and I think it's Chile. The Chinese are just absolutely decimating their fish stocks.
Yeah, it's not an area of the world I'm particularly familiar with, actually, and it's an area on the map actually which we have no engagement with at all. Sort of that South America, Chile area. So there's some really big fisheries down there. So yeah, it's big, isn't it? And the pressures on global nations to why are they doing that, and fuel costs and instability, and it's a lot of things at play just now, aren't there, globally, that are affecting many things.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So,
where do you see community catch in 5 to 10 years, Linda?
Yeah. Well, we'll be GSSI benchmark, which is brilliant. We'll be SSCI benchmark, which is brilliant. So, therefore, all of the global markets that have said that they, would recognise us when we're GSSI should then have been satisfied and feel very comfortable then with us now that we are an alternative third-party scheme to others, in the same way as aquaculture has choice. So, I see, 5 years' time, global acceptance from the marketplace, absolutely would expect. And in terms of what would expectation from a fishery point of view, I think we'll be really well established now across those 5 continents, maybe going into a 6th. I think we'll have probably at least a couple of regional hubs. So maybe that's Africa, maybe that's Asia. And I think that we'll see definitely within 5 years' time, I think we'll see product being traded with a community catch logo on. Just for clarity, it'll only be our certified fisheries that can use a logo. But I'm really hopeful that in the next 12 months we'll have product on shelf somewhere that's got a community catch logo on pack, or we've got a sign up behind counter somewhere, shouting about why community catch is different and how it looks after people, and that'll be a really proud moment when we actually see it on a live pack, in front of a consumer. But I'm interested in what we can look back on in 5 years' time and what our impact report will be. So I suppose one of the things I expect to happen with community catch is that, we've been lucky with Orkney and that they've been certified, but we don't expect the majority of our fisheries to be able to get community catch certified straight away. We've got a complex standard, we've got social requirements in there. So we are expecting around 80% of the fisheries overall to be in a community catch fishery improvement plan. And I'm personally really excited about the work that goes on in those fishery improvement plans. And I think that if we in 5 years' time can point to some fisheries where, had they not gone through community catch, they would not have addressed that maybe fishermen safety problem, that bonded labour issue, that bycatch issue with sharks or whatever. And had they not engaged with us, they wouldn't have tackled those problems. I think that's what I'm going to feel most proud about, actually, because that's making change on the water. And that's where it has to happen. We can all talk about it, but, if there are things happening right now and people are catching fish that they don't want to or try not to, and we can help them avoid that, by them going into that fishery improvement plan and putting them in contact with the right people to help them lead that, then that's really good. And if we can, the human rights piece, if we can work with fisheries where maybe they have got some things going on there which aren't great for the fishermen, and by going through community catch, those issues are addressed and those fishermen have a better life, then I think that's amazing. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting some fishery improvement plans and seeing, or it could be rebuilding a stock. It could be working with the fishery where we've got, one of the stocks not in great shape and we need to actually support that fishery through a FIP to rebuild that stock. So any one of those three things, I think I think that's what's really important. If it doesn't change on the water, then our impact is people are selling things and feeling good about selling things, but we haven't made any of the actual environmental or fish or people things better. And I want us to be able to make claim to that people's lives are better or fish stocks healthier or whatever. I think it's important to me. I think the team would probably say the same.
Listening to you there, Linda, I would have to say you're talking about selling. I would say passion, your drive, listening to the words you said there, to repeat them back to you, excitement, pride, looking forward, interest, all so positive. Just talking, Linda, you're selling. I love your passion. I love your passion.
Oh, there's so much opportunity, isn't there, to make things a little bit better, for many different areas.
It's because it's what do we see? Is it a glass half full, a glass half empty? It's how you see it. And I love the way what you're seeing as opportunities and
I am an eternal optimist, absolutely.
Oh, well, that's brilliant.
And you've got to be. I think there's a lot of positives, and I really want us to make a difference, and people to be proud as hell of working with us and choosing us as a partner for them. So it's great. It's great. And
I would say any of them listening to you, they'll just be saying, "Yeah, we're coming. We're coming in. We're
good. Well, we're more than welcome. More than welcome. And this is just I'm lucky enough to be part of a small team. There's 6 of us, and just brilliant people. And you never know when you're working with a new team of people. If everybody's going to gel, and we've all had to become quite entrepreneurial. We've all had to learn skills we didn't think were necessary. How does a website work? How do you build that? How do you say this? But we've got a tremendous group of people in the community catch team, and so dedicated, and who've really chosen to be part of something different and something new and optimistic. And we've got Carlos. He's our fishery outreach manager. He's Venezuelan. He's in real expert in African fisheries, Central American fisheries. He's based in Portugal. Fluent Spanish speakers. He's very busy, always speaking to lots of people in Spanish. Absolutely incredible guy. PhD, oceanographer. Just cracking. So dedicated. We've got Elodie in the States, French, but she's in Colorado. Very well, connected with the academia side. She's our head of standards in Monterey Bay, Stanford. All these guys, but very passionate about the human rights and the social sciences side of things. So our Fisher Voice survey, impact on real people in real communities. Got Abby in the UK, absolutely tremendous individual. Her background is actually worked on salmon farming for a while, and then she worked in the certification bodies in the UK as well, and then she worked for UK Retail, so she's got a really good comprehensive background, and she's our ops manager there's nothing that Abby can't do, basically. She's just incredible, the backbone of our organisation. Hussein's in Jakarta, Indonesia. He's a journalist. He helps us with our comms and lots of our fishery-facing documentation, translations, and we like an infographic. We like our literature to be quite user-friendly. And we've got support on the commercial market outreach side from a industry veteran, retail veteran in the UK, working in food service, and also retail, Ian Mahood, who's sort of the other member of the team, and we're supported by a very good board of trustees, many of whom were involved in writing the standard at the very beginning, and they've got background in early days MSc, also certification bodies. Also, we've got organisations like Flora and Fauna, who are environmental NGOs, people who are very interested in the social side of things, and a really nice mix of people who are critical friends, I would say. And they've been very supportive, and they've let us create this in a very dynamic, nimble way. They trust us to deliver as an exec, and we've been funded well. We've have to mention, sort of just to finish off, Sustainable Fisheries and Communities Trust, SFACT. They've been our main funder since the very beginning. They believed in us, and they continue to be our main funder. But they have provided resources for us, people, connections, and we wouldn't be here without that support. And as we move into this next chapter now, we're building funding relationships with other partners, fishmongers, one of them, seafarers, different people internationally as well, and and we will become self-sustaining. So we're a charity, we're not for profit. We literally have to pay the wages, pay for the website and the digital platform every month. We don't need to be making any more money than that. The fisheries go through this whole process for free. We don't take any income from that at all. And how we fund ourselves really is through that supply chain. So through those factories agreeing to keep the integrity of the product, signing up as membership, shouting about the product, advertising it. So through a membership structure, and also through a little bit of grant funding as well. And we'll be standalone, self-funding in a year and a half, which is fast and good. And it's really, really good. It's tough. We're not millionaires. We have to justify everything. We can't be here, there, and everywhere. We need to make sure we can afford to do what we're doing. But we're building strong on really good foundations, and building for a long future. So really proud to work with that team. Absolutely, that team's a special group of individuals.
Do you feel that saying is correct, when the going gets tough, the tough get going?
Yeah, I think, I used to probably interpret that statement as being the tough, as a tough person's a bad person, but I think it's about resilience, isn't it, a little bit?
Yeah.
I think when it's tough, and it is, it's not tough, it's, it's challenging. We're trying to launch something new. And I think that that's not for everyone. And it's, you've just got to keep working away and sticking to what we stand for, and, taking the positives, absolutely maximising any positive interactions we have, and amplifying them, and being and delivering, doing what we say we're going to do. That's really important at these early stages. We said we were going to launch a fishery. We launched a fishery. Said we're going to get GSSI. We'll get GSSI. And I think we just need to keep doing that. And more people will have heard about us, trust us, and believe in us and engage with us. So, just keep doing what we're doing.
Good. Where can our listeners follow you and Community Catch online?
Yeah, so we're quite noisy on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot. It's the equivalent of flicking through the newspapers for me. So we're on LinkedIn. We post quite a lot under Community Catch on LinkedIn. We also have an Instagram page as well, Community Catch. We have our website, which is communitycatch.org, which is just been refreshed again. You'll see our first fishery on there, Orkney, and be able to read the story about the Orkney fishery in the Find a Fishery section. There's a resources section, which is where all our standards are held. And we've got a news page as well, which is where lots of our news articles are. That's just been updated. You find us on our website, Instagram, LinkedIn. And I'm always happy to talk to anyone, and so is our team, about anything you think we could support with or help with.
Well, I would just like to thank you, and the fold up Linda, I would just say from listening to you, which I've loved doing, I asked you about you. I think you're a great leader. You're a CEO, but when I asked you about things there, you all you talked about was team and we.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it
think
is.
you. It sounds like you go by the saying, "There's no I in team."
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have a team. I've always loved working with teams my whole career, actually, and I didn't have one for the last 5 years that actually that I was responsible for. I worked along colleagues and in a team, but I wasn't responsible for a team, and it's been amazing. Really, really cool to get back into that. I get a huge amount of fulfillment from seeing them be successful and them growing and just absolutely doing a tremendous job. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be associated with them, and yeah, I get a lot of kicks out of that. So it works really well for me. So yeah, it is we, and we do it all. So yeah, long may that continue. It's my job
If
to
I
keep
was,
them happy and keep them motivated and give them the opportunities that they want and deserve and the challenges and yeah, it's going well. We're in a good place.
the one thing I would, but not I as in myself, but you, I would say what's winning with them all is your passion is infectious.
It's been called
And
something else.
brushing off on every one of them. So
Yeah,
that's
I
why they're
think
a great team. It starts from the
yeah,
top.
yeah, but it has to come from them as well. Like if we had a team of people who didn't like uncertainty or like things to be fixed and rigid, then they would have really struggled with the last 12 months. It's been very, very fluid. Um, I've had the opportunity to travel with three of them now, actually individually to different places, and I think they'd all use the word intense when they go on a trip with me because it's quite on and there's a lot on. So they are always intense trips, but I think traveling with each other is really important. We make sure we see each other at least once a year as a whole group. We were in Scotland last year on some fishing boats last November, deliberately in one of our fisheries to get together as a team. We're in Barcelona every year together, and you've got to spend time with people, and they're real human beings with real families and real lives and things that are important
Yeah.
to them, and you've got to get to know each other. And I love that. I'm looking forward to seeing them all again very soon. And yeah, but I think they describe me as intense, probably, um, as well as maybe motivating.
Well,
But
if I had to if you asked me to describe, I know you haven't, but if you asked me to describe you, my words would be a breath of fresh air.
oh, nice, good, oh, good, good. Well, I'm glad.
Because
I'm glad that's how I
well,
come across.
thank you very much for
Yeah.
your
Well,
time
thank you.
today.
Thank you again. It's always lovely, really lovely to talk to you, and it's a real honour to have this platform. And yeah, and I listen avidly to everybody's podcasts, and you're just fantastic. You learn so much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much again.